I have the honor to speak on behalf of the 5 Nordic countries, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and the 3 Baltic States, Lithuania, Estonia, and my own country, Latvia. The veto, once envisioned as safeguard for peace, has too often become a barrier to collective action. It has prevented the Security Council from decisively responding to acts of aggression and atrocity crimes. Each time the Council fails to act, it is civilians who pay the highest price. We deeply regret that in 2025, 4 vetoes have been cast. The credibility of the United Nations and the multilateral system depends on our collective ability to uphold international law, including the UN Charter. And no state stands above international law. The authority of the United Nations derives from the principle that peace is secured through justice, accountability, and respect for sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political independence of all member states. International law demands that violations of the UN Charter are met with consequences, not silence. Time and again, we have seen the veto used or threatened to block Council action to protect civilians in Sudan and Gaza, to prevent Security Council mandated sanctions and expert bodies supporting their implementation, and not least to stop Council action on Russia's illegal war of aggression against Ukraine, which represents a grave breach of international law and the very principles on which this organization is founded. We believe that the threat of veto should not paralyze the Council when it is expected to safeguard the most basic principles of the Charter, ensuring international peace and security and defending state sovereignty and territorial integrity. All member states must fully implement and adhere to all provisions of the Charter. We reiterate that for Council members, this obliges also the full implementation of Article 27.3, and we must take steps to ensure its consistent implementation. Madam President, the veto must never serve as a shield for impunity or as an instrument that silences the suffering. We underline the importance of restraint in the use of veto powers, particularly in situations involving mass atrocities. Therefore, we continue to fully support and promote the ACT Code of Conduct regarding Security Council action against genocide, crimes against humanity or war crimes, and the political declaration on suspension of veto powers in cases of mass atrocity initiated by France and Mexico. Both of these instruments reflect the moral responsibility entrusted to the Council and reinforce its credibility in responding to the gravest threats to international peace and security. Transparency and accountability in the use of veto are essential. Every decision to block collective action should be subject to scrutiny, and those who wield the veto must answer to the wider membership for the consequences of their action, or more precisely, their inaction in the context of upholding international peace and security. We welcome the consistent implementation of Resolution 76-262 that marked a significant step towards greater transparency and accountability within the UN system and calls for concrete outcomes from veto debates. It put on our agenda a reflective moment for the General Assembly to consider its own scope for action when the Council has failed to do so. The Charter empowers the General Assembly to consider and make recommendations on any matter within the scope of the Charter, including on matters of international peace and security. Finally, we encourage the Office of the PGA to continue the good practice of producing a summary of the recommendations and proposals expressed in today's debate and in all debates convened in line with the Resolution 76-262, and to circulate them to the President of the Security Council for further consideration and to all Member States and observers. And I thank you.